The billionaire had always believed everything around him belonged to him. The mansion, the land it sat on, the cars in the driveway, the people who worked for him, and even the woman he married. In his mind, ownership wasn't just about documents or legality. It was about control. And for years, he had control over everything. Before we continue, take a quick second to support the channel. These stories take time, care, and real effort to create. If you enjoy powerful billionaire stories like this one, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our community. It helps the channel grow, and lets us keep bringing you stories that matter. Thank you. Now, let's continue. He was a powerful real estate billionaire, known for demolishing old properties and rebuilding them into luxury developments. His reputation was built on bold decisions and zero hesitation. When he wanted something gone, it disappeared. When he wanted something built, it rose quickly. No one questioned him, because no one could afford to. At home, his wife lived quietly. She wasn't flashy. She didn't interfere in his business. She didn't argue. She didn't demand attention. She took care of the mansion, handled household affairs, and supported his public image. To outsiders, she looked like a typical billionaire wife, comfortable, calm, and dependent. But what the billionaire never understood was that her silence wasn't weakness. It was patience. Over time, the billionaire became bored. Power no longer excited him the way it used to. Success felt normal. Luxury felt ordinary. And that's when he met the other woman. She was younger, louder, and impressed by everything he said. She admired his wealth, his confidence, and the authority he carried. Unlike his wife, she constantly reminded him how powerful he was. She talked about big dreams, modern houses, and a future that didn't include his past. She hated the mansion. She called it old, outdated, and tied to a life he should leave behind. She told him the house didn't reflect the man he had become. And slowly, the idea settled into his mind. Why keep a house that represented his marriage, when he could erase it and build something new? One afternoon, without informing his wife, the billionaire made a decision. He contacted a demolition company through one of his private business entities. He ordered them to prepare to tear down the mansion completely. No discussion. No explanation. In his mind, he didn't need permission to destroy what he believed was his. He scheduled the demolition quietly, planning to inform his wife after it was already done. He believed she would be shocked, emotional, and powerless to stop it. That morning, the sound of heavy trucks entering the driveway broke the silence. His wife stepped outside and saw construction vehicles lining the property. Workers moved equipment into position. Machines stood ready. It took only seconds for her to understand what was happening. She approached one of the workers and calmly asked why they were there. The man told her they were scheduled to demolish the house, authorized by the owner. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She simply went back inside. Minutes later, she received a message from her husband. It was short and cold. He told her the house was being demolished and that she should pack her things. There was no apology. No explanation. Just a command. Instead of responding, she made a phone call. Not to him. To her lawyer. What the billionaire didn't know, what he never bothered to ask, was that 3 days earlier, something life-changing had happened. Her father had passed away quietly, leaving behind an inheritance no one talked about publicly. And included in that inheritance was something the billionaire had always assumed he controlled. The mansion. The property had never been fully his. It had been placed in a trust years earlier, designed to transfer ownership at the right moment. And that moment had already arrived. As the demolition crew waited for instructions, legal documents were already being reviewed. The wife stood calmly on the property, watching the illusion of power begin to crack. The billionaire, still confident, was on his way. He believed he was arriving to watch his past disappear. He had no idea he was about to lose everything he thought he owned. When the billionaire arrived at the mansion, he expected silence. He expected to see his wife packing, workers preparing, and the house moments away from being erased. In his mind, this was already finished. He believed he was walking in to confirm a decision that could not be undone. Instead, he saw police vehicles, city officials, and his wife standing calmly near the front of the property, speaking quietly with a man in a suit. At first, he thought it was a mistake. He stepped out of his car, irritation already rising. He demanded to know why the demolition had not started. The foreman hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, and pointed toward the group of officials. The billionaire turned to his wife, anger flashing across his face. He accused her of interfering. He told her she had no authority to stop anything. He reminded her that this was his property and his decision. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply waited. That silence unsettled him more than any argument ever could. Moments later, her lawyer stepped forward and asked the billionaire for his attention. The tone was calm, professional, and firm. He explained that the demolition order had been suspended due to a legal ownership dispute. The billionaire laughed. He said there was no dispute. He said the house was his. He said his name was on everything that mattered. The lawyer handed him a folder. Inside were documents that told a different story. The billionaire scanned the first page quickly, still confident. Then he slowed down. His expression changed as he read further. His grip tightened. He flipped through the pages faster, searching for something that would prove him right. It wasn't there. The mansion had been held in a family trust. A trust created long before his marriage. A trust that transferred full ownership to his wife upon her father's passing. And that transfer had already been completed. 3 days ago. The billionaire's confidence collapsed in real time. He demanded explanations. He accused the lawyer of manipulation. He turned to his wife and asked her why she hadn't told him. She finally spoke. She said she didn't think he needed to know, since he didn't think she needed to be consulted. That sentence hit harder than the documents. The demolition crew received official orders to shut down immediately. City inspectors confirmed the suspension. The police ensured no further action was taken on the property. What the billionaire thought was a private decision had become a public halt. And it didn't stop there. Because the demolition order hadn't just been arrogant. It had been illegal. The billionaire had authorized destruction of a property he did not own. He had used a corporate entity to issue the order. And that triggered consequences he never expected. By the afternoon, his legal team was scrambling. Calls were being made. Meetings were cancelled. His phone rang non-stop, not with praise or opportunity, but with warnings. His wife, now the legal owner of the mansion, filed an immediate injunction. Then she filed a formal complaint. The demolition company, trying to protect itself, cooperated fully with authorities. Responsibility fell exactly where it belonged. On him. The mistress tried calling him that evening. He didn't answer. Not because he was thinking clearly, but because his world was already falling apart. By nightfall, whispers spread through elite circles. Lawyers talk. Developers talk. Bankers talk. And when a billionaire makes a mistake that exposes weakness, everyone notices. He was no longer being spoken about as powerful. He was being spoken about as careless, reckless, arrogant. His wife, meanwhile, moved quietly. She secured her assets. She froze access to shared accounts. She made decisions she had been prepared for long before that day. The billionaire went home to an empty penthouse that night. For the first time, no one was waiting for him. No assistants. No admirers. No applause. Just silence. He replayed the moment in his head over and over again. The documents. The look in her eyes. The realization that everything he believed about control had been wrong. The house still stood. But his authority did not. And the next phase of his downfall was already in motion. The billionaire woke up the next morning believing he could still fix everything. For years, whenever a problem appeared, money and influence erased it. Regulators could be persuaded. Partners could be pressured. Bad decisions could be buried under new deals. He had survived scandals before, and this felt like just another situation he could control with the right phone calls. But this time was different. His legal team arrived early, unusually tense. They didn't sit comfortably. They didn't reassure him. Instead, they laid out the reality in simple terms he couldn't argue with. The demolition order he authorized had crossed multiple legal boundaries. It wasn't just a personal mistake. It involved misuse of corporate authority, breach of trust, and exposure to civil liability. Worse, his wife was not backing down. She wasn't negotiating quietly. She wasn't asking for privacy. She was moving decisively and lawfully, step by step, guided by advisors who had clearly prepared for this moment long before it arrived. By mid-morning, banks began asking questions. Accounts he had always assumed were untouchable were temporarily restricted pending review. Lenders paused funding on 2 major development projects. Investors requested emergency meetings. People who once rushed to please him were now protecting themselves. Power, he realized, only works when others believe in it. And belief was fading. The mistress called again. This time he answered. She wanted reassurance. She wanted to know when the mansion would be gone, when the new house would be built, and when their future would finally begin. But his voice lacked confidence. He gave vague answers. He avoided specifics. She noticed. By the end of the call, her tone had changed. She reminded him she didn't sign up for chaos or uncertainty. She didn't say goodbye, but she didn't say she believed in him either. That afternoon, news of the halted demolition quietly reached industry insiders. No headlines yet. Just confirmation through legal filings and permits. Developers talk fast, and the story spread exactly as it was. A billionaire ordered the demolition of a house he didn't own. That sentence alone damaged his reputation more than any lawsuit could. At an emergency board meeting later that day, he expected loyalty. He expected silence. He expected compliance. Instead, he faced questions. Why hadn't he verified ownership? Why had he bypassed legal review? Why were shared assets exposed to personal decisions? For the first time, his authority was challenged openly. He responded with anger, then frustration, then deflection. But none of it worked. The board didn't remove him, but they didn't protect him either. They created distance. They limited his discretion. They made it clear his power now had conditions. Meanwhile, his wife continued operating calmly. She moved into a private residence temporarily, not because she had to, but because she wanted clarity. She didn't give interviews. She didn't post statements. Everything she did was legal, controlled, and deliberate. That silence frustrated him more than public humiliation ever could. Because silence meant she didn't need validation. 2 days later, formal legal notices arrived. She was suing for damages related to emotional distress, attempted unlawful property destruction, and misuse of marital assets. Each claim was documented carefully, leaving no room for intimidation or delay. He tried calling her. She didn't answer. He tried sending messages. They went unread. He tried reaching her through mutual connections. No one wanted to get involved. Even his closest allies advised him to slow down, to stop reacting, to accept that this was no longer about dominance. That night, he sat alone in his office, surrounded by glass, lights reflecting off a city he once believed he ruled. For the first time, he questioned something he had never questioned before. What if he had never truly been in control? The mansion still stood, untouched, protected by law. And with every hour that passed, it became a symbol. Not of wealth, but of the moment his power stopped working. By the end of the week, the mistress stopped calling. No explanation. No closure. Just absence. He realized then that what attracted people to him wasn't loyalty or love. It was certainty. And once that certainty cracked, everything else disappeared with it. The billionaire was still rich, still influential, but no longer feared. And in his world, that was the beginning of the end. The legal process moved faster than the billionaire expected. He was used to dragging things out, delaying outcomes, and exhausting opponents until they gave up. But this time, there was nothing to stall. The facts were clear. The documents were solid. And his wife's legal team had anticipated every possible move. Within weeks, the court issued its first ruling. The demolition order was officially declared unlawful. The billionaire was held financially responsible for damages caused by the attempted destruction of a property he did not own. Penalties were imposed, not symbolic ones, but serious financial consequences meant to set an example. For the first time, his wealth did not shield him. More rulings followed. Shared assets were reviewed carefully. Accounts were separated. Ownership structures were re-examined. Anything that had once been assumed to be his was now scrutinized under the law. The process was slow, but it was thorough. His wife never appeared emotional in court. She never raised her voice. She never tried to humiliate him. She simply let the truth speak. The judge made it clear that inheritance law was not optional, and marital power did not override legal ownership. The mansion remained entirely hers. Additional assets tied to the trust were transferred into accounts solely under her control. The billionaire sat silently as decision after decision went against him. No speeches. No warnings. Just consequences. Outside the courtroom, there were no reporters waiting for dramatic statements. The story had already done its damage quietly. In elite circles, reputations don't collapse through headlines. They collapse through closed doors and lost confidence. Projects were delayed. Partnerships dissolved. Opportunities stopped coming. People no longer assumed his decisions were final. That change followed him everywhere. The mistress, now fully aware of the situation, sent a short message weeks later. She said she needed stability, not problems. She said she hadn't realized how complicated his life really was. Then she disappeared completely. He didn't respond. By then, he understood exactly what had happened. His wife finalized the divorce without spectacle. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't attempt to destroy him the way he had tried to destroy her home. She asked only for what was legally hers, and she got it. On the final day, she walked through the mansion one last time. Not with sadness. With closure. The house was no longer just a place she lived. It was proof. Proof that silence does not mean weakness. Proof that patience can outlast arrogance. Proof that power built on assumption always collapses. She sold the property months later. Not because she needed the money. Because she wanted a clean ending. The sale quietly set records. She reinvested strategically. Real estate. Private ventures. Philanthropy. Her name appeared in business circles for the first time, not as someone's wife, but as an independent billionaire in her own right. The man she once married watched from a distance. He was still wealthy, but diminished. Still known, but no longer respected. Still standing, but permanently exposed. The city moved on. New buildings rose. New names replaced his. And the lesson became a quiet one passed among those who paid attention. Never underestimate silence. Never assume ownership without truth. And never confuse control with permanence. The woman he thought had nothing walked away with everything that mattered. And the billionaire who thought he owned the house learned too late that power does not belong to those who shout the loudest, but to those who prepare the longest.